Falklands, Lebanon, Northern Ireland, Kuwait,
Bosnia,
Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya.
We were living off our vehicles in the desert for weeks and months at a time. We were fighting usually on a daily basis.
rifle fire, shooting, being put in stressful situations.
Explosion, big lumps of hot metal exploding from the mortar shell.
Ambushes, chaos, smell of blood. Young lads being killed. Carrying casualties through mortar attacks. Snipers targeting me. No amount of training could have prepared me.
But you have to tell yourself to get on with it.
You have to adapt so quickly to that situation. Survival. We had no means of escaping it. Post-traumatic stress disorder affects me every day.
Nightmares.
Recurrent nightmares.
Flashbacks.
Anger. It's an invisible wound which you can't see. It's damage done to the brain.
Shame.
Shame. Fear.
Guilt.
Chaos.
It's an invisible enemy. You can't fight that.
Rage.
Drinking constantly.
Horror.
Anxiety.
Sadness.
Paranoia.
You can't move on.
Every single day, I will think about taking my own life.
If I died tomorrow, who would actually care?
Silence. Breaking point.
My name is Andy Shaw. I'm a retired Royal Marine officer and I run an organisation called The Mountain Way. Our function is to help UK veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. I have suffered from PTSD for 33 years as a result of an incident I was involved in the 1982 Falklands War, in which I led a patrol which mistakenly ambushed one of our own patrols and killed 4 of our friendly men. I was tasked with the mission of going forward onto the position to find the enemy's mortar positions and to destroy them. All of the evidence and intelligence that came for the next few minutes pointed in the direction of this being the enemy force we'd been warned about. The actual plan was straightforward, but what actually happened was very different. My emotions were primarily fear, a sense of a sort of inevitability, and rising panic. The troop sergeant and I afterwards reckoned we fired about 680 rounds in that first initial burst. And then came the moment when I heard a British voice and realised this wasn't the enemy at all. This was in fact our own mortar section who had got lost, that we'd ambushed. We then established the truth and discovered that 3 were dead and 1 was in the process of dying and 3 more were very seriously injured. Suddenly I went to the other end of the universe, and I remember that sense of disbelief. Utter disbelief. You cannot believe the information your ears are giving you. And you just can't find an answer to it. 4 men lost their lives. Somebody has to atone for that. There are no black and white answers. Everything is mega complex and multi-layered, and it's impossible to even begin to talk to somebody about unless they've actually got that similar experience. In January 2013, an old friend of mine who had served in the Falklands died of medical complications that were all attributed to PTSD. And that was really the trigger that led to the formation of what we call the Mountain Way. Our function is to help UK veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. It's run on a one-to-one basis to halt their decline towards eventually, sadly, suicide, to give them compass bearing to move on, to get them out of the black fog, and to give them a set of abilities to enable them to cope with this disorder and to restore their pride and self-esteem. It's a removal from the materialistic world down there on the plain. We're now at an aesthetic height. You get a clarity, both literally and internally, I think. And it's that internal clarity which enables these guys to actually start identifying the issues that are really affecting them. All of that stuff is taking people out of the mental territory they're occupying in a PTSD environment and putting them somewhere else.
I didn't have any self-confidence, self-loathing, very depressed. My life was going in a downward spiral.
I became a very aggressive person, a very violent person. For my family, it put them in a very, very difficult position. They knew that there was something horrendously wrong with me, but they didn't even know how to talk to me about it.
It's quite a hard thing to do, picking up the phone, especially for a soldier. They're not trained to ask for help, really.
My mum and stepdad went to a talk about the Mountain Way. Straight away, she knew that's what needed to happen. With Andy, straight away, I didn't have to explain militarisms to him. I could say we went out in a Chinook, and the man knows what a Chinook is. You meet a conventional counsellor, they don't know, so you have to stop what you're talking about. And also, the way that Andy responded to things, I knew he got it, and I knew he wasn't judging me. I said a couple of things about myself that I was ashamed of, and straight away Andy could not only relate to it, he would give me an anecdote that let me know that he had been in the same place. That's when I fully trusted Andy. Spending that time with Andy, talking to him one-to-one, getting to know him, completely put me at ease. And it was like a release of a valve, because all of a sudden I had not just a safe space to be able to discuss it, it was a safe space with someone who could actually empathise and sympathise with me, who knew what it felt like. And that feeling was overwhelming. It makes me a little bit emotional now. It was overwhelming to have that connection with someone I could talk to who genuinely understood. I didn't understand how just talking about it would make the blind bit of difference, but through the process of the Mountain Way, when I came to discuss the most significant event for me, where we had multiple casualties and a fatality, when we sat down right around the campfire and discussed that, I could talk about any fear. I knew I wasn't going to lose control. I knew I was in a safe space, and giving a voice to that event helped massively. It's being able to describe it to someone who's experienced something with all the same emotions, the same fear, the same guilt afterwards, all of those negative emotions attached to that. They've experienced them all. And therefore, you don't need to explain things. You don't need to justify your statement. You can say something that to an average person would sound abhorrent. It would sound awful. People can't help but judge you, because when you're in that situation, you do and see things that are way out of the norm that no one else can understand. But having someone sat there with you who totally understands makes the biggest difference, and it makes it possible to discuss it and leave it behind. For 10 years, I've been thoroughly unpleasant to be around, and I changed so much while I was away. But because of the things that you learn, the techniques, I'm now at a stage with it that I genuinely don't think there's a situation I can't deal with. There's nothing that I can't cope with anymore. I believe that PTSD is so complex, the things that are currently in place to support veterans just don't work. What we're currently doing, it isn't working. I think the Mountain Way is so niche and so different, and it is desperately needed. It treats you as an individual. There's no rush. There's no way to explain to someone who hasn't had PTSD how different it is. It's so natural. It's chatting to somebody who becomes a friend because they understand in a way that no one else can other than another veteran. And anyone with ears that will listen to me, I'll bend your ear off telling you about the Mountain Way. So in short, would I recommend it? Absolutely.
Helping people to understand themselves. And when you see that moment in their eyes, when the truth dawns, and they start to think, actually, I can do something about this. I can take charge of this problem. That's a hell of a sense of satisfaction.
I think it's a life-changing experience for me.
And it has changed my life.